Hey everybody, welcome back. In this video we are going to get working on the exhaust system. That includes clocking the turbo, getting the muffler set up, and also starting to get the exhaust pipe run. So let's get started. Alright, clocking the turbo. One of the things that we need to make sure is basically my inlet's coming in here from the sides. Now, one of the things when you're clocking and why you want to clock your turbo is you want to make sure that your oil feed is always coming into the top and then coming out the bottom. And so for right now, my oil feed is coming out the side. So I need to change and rotate that cartridge. But at the same time, I want to keep this turbo facing up. So there's typically either a band or bolts here that's going to hold into the compressor. And same thing with the actual unit at the front. And we can typically turn and slide those around. The trickier part with this turbo is that it's internally gated and it does have a bracket here, so we're gonna have to find a good spot to make sure that that bracket continues to be able to be in the right spot so that the wastegate will work. So, first step is loosening up all these different things and starting to rotate things around, maybe hold it up against the car, making sure that I've got the right orientation of everything, and then secure it back together. With a little bit of heat and persuasion, we're able to get the center cartridge out and the compressor housing here. So you can see that it had like a high temperature silicone to go around it. I picked up some more just to put it back together again once I clock it in the right position. So I kind of scraped that out, used a little bit of sandpaper to clean it up. Same thing on the face of the compressor housing meets there. Now, one of the things with these turbos and a bunch of the VF turbos is they've got this little dowel, and this little dowel here is to make it so that the compressor or the center cartridge lines up for the wastegate and everything along those lines so that you can't get it twisted. So I'm going to have to cut this guy off so that I can spin and turn things around, and then I should be able to assemble things back together in the direction that I want them to face. And we're in business. Okay, so here we've got essentially where the hooks onto the manifold, where we're gonna get the exhaust gas coming in. I've got the turbo facing straight up, or as straight as I can. I need to get it clocked enough so that my wastegate connections actually would go and it wasn't stretching the wastegate arm a whole lot. I got clearance in here from my water return that comes out of the bottom of the center cartridge, center section. I had to cut, there's like a little tab that was holding this and the other water together at the top that's been now cut. So now I've got water coming inlet, outlet, and then I've got to flip the oil line over to be facing up. So our oil supply is coming up here and our oil drain down here at the bottom. So everything all lines up. And we've got our wastegate all connected here as well with the wastegate arm. So everything should be positioned now that I'm not going to get any kind of catastrophic failure here. I got my oil supply and it's running straight down through. That's one of the main things, is that you want to be able to have oil coming in the top and draining straight down the bottom. Keep everything well lubricated. I just gotta connect up my wastegate hose here. But that should have the turbo all set. Now, the fact that the turbo is down low and we've got the drain pipe down here is that I'm going to be installing a little scavenger pump. So it's a little nano pump that I'm going to hook up basically in the same spot of where the stock turbo would sit, so that it's able to connect directly into kind of the supply and return lines right back where the existing turbo used to sit, and I can just kind of pump that through when the ignition of the car is on. I can just pump and make sure oil is flowing and scavenging back up from the bottom and then draining back down to the usual stock drain stuff. So that gets the turbo all set to go. Everything is mounted in place, so everything looks good. I'm happy with how it turned out. I did also put in, so I picked up some version 7 STI axles, so I'm going to need to modify these obviously to match up with the axle stubs that are here, but I wanted to be able to kind of squish them in place for the most part because I need to figure out how much clearance I'm going to have coming out of the back of the turbo and running up in through here to clear any of the axles in that area. Probably have to wrap it just to try to keep heat away from the boot as much as possible, but so that has that stuff. Now, I don't think it's going to be a big deal near the boot, considering, you know, this is where the downpipe from the turbo came anyways, down past here. So the idea is to run it up through here and around and into the exhaust in the back. So what I've been doing is figuring out exactly where to put it so that I've got clearance over those bolts, that I got a straight shot coming in and not having it hang out the back a whole lot. So I kind of created this brace and spacing on here so that I can position it where I want coming out the back, so it doesn't come out much further than the tow hook on the back there, and it's going to give enough space in here between where my shift cables and stuff, if I need to do any heat shielding or something down there, just to protect those from the heat from the exhaust. Now I'm hoping to create almost kind of like a cage on the back here that basically holds everything, so I don't need to do it in real thick or strong metal, but some kind of a cage, maybe using 90-degree angle iron or something like that, to create this structure in the back to hold this, and then I can even clad it on the sides with, you know, aluminum or carbon or whatever I want to do back there, just so that you're not gaping into the holes on the side of it and taking a look at it from the side profile. So I think that's what I'm thinking about doing there. So next up is grabbing the material to start to cage this in, and probably just find a way of either taping and fastening down this exhaust so it doesn't move on me while I'm figuring that all out. All right, it is a new day and we're back at it. Got the heat pumping in the shop. So today we're going to start to try to get what I'd call kind of like the frame around the exhaust. So we've got everything all mocked up here. So now we need to create kind of a little frame around here that I can put some panels, some heat shielding for the fiberglass on top, something that'll look kind of cool. See if we can make something a little bit angular that matches kind of the diffuser and the rest of the paneling that's on there. So now it's time to get things mocked up. Alright, so we've got the base of these kind of ladders across here. Just wanted to raise it up off of that main bar. Now the main thing here is I want to still be able to lift the transmission right out of the back, so I wanted to have these rails kind of raised here, and one of the reasons for raising and keeping it symmetrical is that I've got the shifter cable coming in the side here, so I wanted to give space underneath to be able to have that go there. So now I need to create almost kind of little braces going back and forth here that then need to be able to bolt on and connect to the base. So almost kind of like a little cradle for the exhaust on an angle coming up here. There'll be some bolt-on spots here and some bolt-on spots here, and that is what will create essentially the basis of the cradle going across, and then being able to find ways to bolt it down into the bottom here. We now have tabs welded onto the top of the muffler here, and they're just slightly shorter, and then you got matching ones bolted onto them. So these ones on the front and the back here will be welded to pieces coming out and along here. So that will be the top frame of what holds the exhaust in place, and then it will connect down to these bars here with some kind of connector. Still figuring out exactly how I want to connect those, so it's all bolted in place. So once I have that all bolted in place, then I can remove all of this stuff that's just kind of holding things temporarily, and then figure out my end cuts here and how I want to finish the back end of this to all connect on. Okay, let's take a look at where we've gotten. So we've got the brackets all in place, all of the bolt points, trim and finish these things up and clean them up nice once everything's in, but this is all welded up here into a frame. So we see the exhaust bolted onto there. Likely going to draw something, right across here, so for the last piece of steel, and then draw it down to this post down here on an angle. So I think that's be the last kind of piece to go in. Now this back piece is going to have to also kind of bolt in, so I'm going to have to take a look exactly how do I want to fasten that onto the rear. But everything's all straight shot on the back. Panels on here are going to be interesting because they twist and turn, so I might be able to twist some aluminum or something in place, something that's not too terrible, maybe some mesh or something, so something that will kind of finish off those panels. And for one, putting a piece of aluminum across the top here just for heat going up into the bodywork that's above. We've got lots of room under here for our shifting mechanism and the cables that go into there. So we've got lots of room still available for that. Everything just all bolts on and pops off. Now what I'll likely do as well is probably weld another piece that goes straight across here for extra support, just so that those feet don't wander and give it kind of a squared in rigidness. So that's what we've been able to finish off today. So there's still a bit more work to go. I'll pop back in and we'll finish this off and complete out the video. Okay, back for another day, and we are getting started by creating a new down pipe / up pipe. Before it went down, now it's going up. Need a way to be able to come up and clear over the axle. So we started creating an angle, kind of tack welded something on, and then built up essentially a collector around. So we've got our flange here that connects to the back of the turbo. We've got our O2 sensor that goes in the top, and then we had kind of this angle for this pipe coming out. And so then I created essentially a cap around being able to redirect the exhaust up and out to try to get flow going out in the right direction there. So generally speaking, it's going to sit upright like this. Exhaust comes out and starts heading up and out and over the axle. So we'll get it in place and we'll see what our clearance looks like. Okay, here we can see our clearance where it's coming up and over the axle to give us lots of room for suspension travel and clearing the boot, and then coming up into this area above here heading to the muffler. So this gave us kind of our clearance coming up. See it all connected there, snaking through. Next thing is just trying to find a way to be able to connect and going up and not painting myself in a corner, not being able to get this pipe out. So we will we'll see how this goes. After a combination of bends and pie cuts, I was able to get the second muffler in just to see if we can quiet it down a little bit, coming straight up there. We got room for the plugs and the transmission dipstick to be able to come out. So now is to make the last connection around from the muffler down into the other muffler, and we'll see if we can get that fabricated in. And that should have everything complete and fabbed up. So we've got our exhaust coming up here from the turbo. We've got our secondary muffler coming in here, coming into our main muffler, on with a V-band clamp that holds it tight here. And then we've got it bolted on to the back of the turbo itself, and everything coming out here. So I ended up putting in those little supports that I talked about across here just to hold everything in square, and then brought this out at the back here as well on an angle to kind of pop up and around the exhaust. So everything is pretty much, you know, you're gonna have to do some finish welding and some cleanup here and there, but the overall fabrication of the exhaust, holding it out there, looks pretty good. I'll likely end up putting on some tabs or something here so I can do some mesh, some across here or something, just to give it a little bit of weight. But maybe some, you know, all of this done in red, and then maybe some black mesh covering that area on both sides. Might look pretty cool. So overall, really pleased with how the exhaust area turned out. Might have to use some different connection points on here to mount you know, the rear sections of the body coming off of this, and or coming out here to the fenders. So this will give me kind of some area to put some other connection points potentially off of it to come out. So really excited on how that turned out. Next step really for me now is I got to pull the transmission out of here. So good thing I set up everything so that I could pull it out. So pull out the transmission. I need to take it up to the guys at 4-Star, where we've got an adapter that's going in inside of the transmission to make basically the all-wheel drive transmission into a 2-wheel drive transmission. So there's a little stub that needs to go in there. It was a tricky part to track down, specifically because I have a JDM transmission to be able to make that stuff work. So now I'll just pull this out, get it up there. But now I've got all kind of my clearances and everything that I need to figure out. Still need to do my axle lengths, but I'm in no rush to be able to get those done. But we're looking pretty good. So that's the end of this video. We've got all the exhaust all fabricated up. Obviously some finishing points left to go with that, but the general fabrication is done and we can move on to the next project. So thanks for joining, and we'll see you in the next video.